Canada, and the United States. That would really be something.
This week, President-elect Donald Trump made headlines and raised eyebrows for threatening economic force to annex Canada. A whopping 82% of Canadians oppose the idea. And Trump's controversial nominees get ready to face the Senate on Capitol Hill. Will Republicans stay united and confirm Trump's cabinet nominees? Plus, Meta is weighing into uncharted waters after announcing a sweeping set of changes to eliminate fact-checkers on the company's platforms. For more on all of this, it's time to go on the record with the Director of Data Science for Decision Desk HQ, Scott Tranter. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. Let's jump right into it. All 52 Senate Republicans are co-sponsoring the Laken Act, which would require the detention of migrants arrested for theft. Democratic Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman is also sponsoring it. Scott, are we seeing Democrats willing and beginning to come to the center of the aisle when it comes to immigration policy?
Yeah, I absolutely think we are. I heard that even Ruben Gallego, the newly elected senator of Arizona, is looking at that as well. Look, this is an issue. Immigration, Julia, you and I were talking about it all last campaign cycle. Immigration was a top 3 issue. It had bipartisan support for being a top 3 issue. Obviously, there's a little bit of philosophical differences about how to handle it, but this Laken Act is something that is going to probably get a few Democratic votes and maybe enough to get to 60 in the Senate, and could be on newly elected President Trump's desk by the end of January.
I want to switch gears a little bit and go to Facebook and Instagram's parent company Meta, which announced this week that it was doing away with its fact check program and will instead adopt a model like X's Community Notes. CEO Mark Zuckerberg says this is an effort to embrace free speech in the wake of the election. Zuckerberg has met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago and donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund. It's important to note that other tech leaders have also donated to the inaugural fund and met with Trump. So, Scott, is this a sign that the president-elect is poised to have greater influence on tech companies, and what could that look like going forward?
Absolutely. I look at all of these, Mark Zuckerberg's recent, Jeff Bezos. You see a lot of these big Fortune 500 CEOs, Fortune 50 CEOs, most recently donate money, try and get meetings. There's going to be a lot of deal making, a lot of regulatory hurdles. Obviously, the Trump administration ran on reducing regulations. So that's what these CEOs are trying to do. I think the other interesting thing Mark Zuckerberg did, obviously, the fact checking, but he also said he was going to tweak the algorithm to allow some of these political issues like gender issues, immigration, those types of things to surface more for those people who want them. For those you remember, things like Facebook, things like Threads and Instagram, they throttled down the political chat going into 2024. So, I look for social media to get a little bit more political, as much as that could be even post 2024.
Yeah, it's interesting to see someone like Elon Musk, obviously the head of X, playing such a big role within the Trump administration, co-leading DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. So we'll be looking out for that as well. I want to turn to one of the bigger stories of the week, or another big story of the week. Trump has made headlines doubling down on his calls to merge the U.S. and Canada. Canada's outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said there's not a snowball's chance in hell this would happen. Trump has also floated the idea of buying Greenland and controlling the Panama Canal, and hasn't ruled out military force to do so. Scott, is this leverage, bluster, or is he actually serious?
Well, I think the one interesting thing I would point out, when he was asked about military options, he did not take it off the table for Panama and Greenland, but did for Canada. So there looks like there is some nuanced thought here. It's not complete trolling. Now, whether or not it happens or not is a different question. 51st state, I mean, if we're going to be serious about this for a moment, states are really hard to add. Territory is not so much. Greenland, 56,000 people. I'm an elections nerd. They have a referendum every couple of years to see if they want independence. It's always close. Mostly it's around the subsidies they get from Denmark. So if they think they're going to get a better deal from the United States, then, it theoretically could be on the table. Panama, Donald Trump's going after, there's some nuances in the treaty that we signed in terms of our ability to protect it and keep it open. I take this seriously. This is something he brought up in the Panama Canal isn't, but Greenland, something he brought up in his last administration. This is something he's going to try and do. Now, whether he's actually going to be able to pull it off, I don't know. But I don't think he's going to give up on it.
Scott, I want to stick with the topic of Greenland. We know France is now saying that the European Union will not allow other nations to attack its sovereign borders after Trump refused to rule out military force when it came to, acquiring Greenland. What are the impacts of other countries becoming involved in this conversation?
It's funny. It's this is something, everyone points out Greenland is a NATO, as a member of NATO, all those types of things. Look, the Trump administration is skeptical of NATO, skeptical of the EU. They're not necessarily wanting to participate in some of these world organizations, or if they participate, they want some big changes. So this type of statement from the European Union and Macron, I'm not surprised about, but I don't think those are the types of things that are going to scare the Trump administration, as they're skeptical of those things coming into it. So they're not necessarily gonna bow to those types of pressures.
I want to turn to Trump's cabinet nominees. We know that dates have been set for a number of his cabinet picks confirmation hearings. A number of them are slated to have their confirmation hearings on the 14th and the 15th of January. Scott, oftentimes these hearings are, seen as, a public, very public facing. The public watches them on television. These picks are grilled, but they can also be in many ways very theatrical, an opportunity for a number of these lawmakers to make some waves on air. What can we expect to see from them?
I think we can expect on some of these to be some must watch TV. I think the Tulsi Gabbard confirmation hearing is going to be pretty newsworthy. The Kash Patel one, and I'm sure there will be a few others, because these nominees are coming in emboldened, right? They're coming in thinking they have a mandate. The Republicans control the Senate. Donald Trump's behind them, so I don't expect these confirmation hearings to be where these potential nominees are groveling or begging or anything like that. I think they're going to stick it to some of these senators, and I think it's going to be must watch. I think some of the ones like Marco Rubio, it looks like he might be confirmed on Inauguration Day. There will be a couple easy ones, but I think some of the ones like Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel and a few others, they're going to be much watch TV.
In the meantime, it's the last few weeks of the Biden administration. This week, the president moved to bar drilling across the U.S. East and West Coasts ahead of Trump taking office. Trump obviously campaigned on drill, baby, drill when it came to energy, and he's slammed the action from President Biden. We also saw those commutations of a number of the sentences for people facing the death penalty. Scott, can we expect Biden to take more actions that are aimed at tying Trump's hands as he prepares to take office?
Based on those actions you mentioned, I would fully expect it down the stretch. It looks like President Biden's going to use every last bit of power that he has on his way out, whether it be more pardons, commutations, whether it be more
all that
executive
existed
orders.
to
It
9
certainly
million
seems like he
Americans
is
access to Social
ignoring
Security
any sort of
benefits they have
criticism in and around these things. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a few more as we go through. It also gives good fodder for
All
Donald Trump.
right.
I know there's a lot of nuance and legal nuance around whether or not he can reverse that order about banning drilling. He's certainly going to try, and it's going to give the Trump administration a lot more vigor and a lot more profile as they fight this stuff as they come in on day one.
I want to move to Capitol Hill, where GOP roadblocks are beginning to emerge with a massive piece of legislation to advance Trump's policies. Trump was on Capitol Hill this week to meet with Senate Republicans about this piece of legislation. Speaker Mike Johnson has referred to it as one big, beautiful bill. It could include reordering the taxes, immigration policy, and federal spending and regulations. Scott, what potential barriers does this bill face?
I think the biggest barrier, well, there's a lot of potential barriers, but the biggest barrier, and I'm a parliamentarian nerd, is the parliamentarian here. What most people don't realize, reconciliation, it's something
Thank you very
where both
much.
the Senate and the
It's an honor to
House
be with you.
something by
Many
majority.
things are happening that are
But
exciting.
the
We're being
parliamentarian
respected again
determined
all
that
over
is
the world. The
germane.
Panama Canal
And
is
so
a
I think you're going to
disgrace.
see a
What
lot
took
of
place
nuanced
at the
fights around that,
Panama
on
Canal.
top of the fact that, Donald
Jimmy
Trump
Carter gave
wants
it to
some
them for
things that some of the
$1 because we're
Republicans in
being
the House
respected
don't
again all
necessarily
over the
want.
world. The
And we
Panama
just
Canal
saw a
is a
very close
disgrace. What
speaker
took
vote.
place at the Panama.
So we'll see whether he's going to be able to wrangle this in. I tend to think Mike Johnson's right. One bill might be all the effort they have. I know why John Thune wants two. I think Donald Trump just wants a win. So I think we're headed for a pretty messy and an explosive, first few months legislatively.
Turning to President Trump's legal issues, the Justice Department says it will only release part of Special Counsel Jack Smith's findings on Trump and his efforts to undo the results of the 2020 election. The department will keep the portion of the report on classified documents at Mar-a-Lago under wraps. Scott, how could this report set the tone as the president returns to office?
You know, it was clear this was something the VP Harris's campaign focused on. The Democrats obviously focused on the campaign in 2 years leading up. It's something the public didn't really care about. So I think whether the report gets released or not released, or what portions of it get released, even short of, it could say some pretty crazy things, I don't think it'll really affect anything in voters' minds, or really taint or help either way Donald Trump's presidency. I think the public's just done hearing about this, and this is the definition of an inside baseball story that only a few people care about.
Absolutely. And, Donald Trump obviously looking to turn the page on that chapter of those many legal issues. Scott Tranter, as always, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it for What's America Thinking. I'm Julia Manchester. Come back next week. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel.